popped the drone up in the air, and I have filmed a couple different times from this one particular farm. We actually chopped corn in here one year when it started snowing, and we've got some other footage from this particular field as well. But I popped the drone up today because we have a power company that's been working on power lines here, and they did have a set of mats going across this field on a diagonal here, and they are just getting the mats picked up now, and I thought I would show you some footage of the process of that. So they've got one of the trucks that carries the mats backed in. I don't know if they've got much more to load on to it, but they have since picked up everything going across this field here. It looks like there's another truck ready to back in. Maybe that guy's strapping down, but there is a truck up on the turnaround there getting ready to back in. Yesterday they were across this field, and then they ended up going through the swamp, and then they were across the other fields here to our west. We'll kind of fly over the area where they were working here. Where they have come through the grass, they're just shaking down some straw, and we really don't know what they did. They must have just were doing some maintenance and whatever. But this is not the farm that had the mat set up here that I showed you a few weeks ago. But they come across this little wet, swampy area, and they had mats setting across the field that we're flying over the top of, and then you can kind of see the power lines off in the distance there, and then they had their mats setting all the way across here, and yes, they did pick them up rather quickly. So the girls ended up running the Pottinger discs over all of this. My father's in this backfield, he's planting that one, and they have since moved on to another farm. So what we have is this one corner of this particular field that I am in that we're just going to have to no-till. So we can see the other corn planter is off in the distance here, and I would imagine that they are backing their next truck in. So we'll just kind of show you that process here. You can see that corner of the field there. We're going to have to we'll just no-till that, no big deal. This corn was chopped here last year, and there wasn't much truck traffic or anything back in this corner, so we shouldn't have too much to worry about there. So we'll just keep plugging away here. I thought I would just kind of show you what this all looks like here. We'll fly over to where they're getting in and off the road here. They've got that truck loaded. They bridged up over this area where there's some water kind of runs through there. They've got to turn around up by these one set of poles here. There's a truck waiting to get in, and then they come in and off the road right there. So yeah, that'll give you an idea of what this looks like anyways. We'll get this drone back to the tractor, and we'll keep plugging away. this is what we're going to start with here today. We've got to get the corn planter cleaned out, and we are switching from a grain corn variety back to a BMR silage variety. This will be the last time that we have to switch from grain corn to BMR and or BMR to grain. So we're on the tail end of planting corn for 2023. We won't be able to quite do it in one day. We got a couple days left anyway. So we're loading fertilizer here. We use 3 different products. We've got one product in these 2 tanks here, second product in them last 2 tanks there, and then the last tank we've got the third product. The third product we have in this tank here currently. However, we are pumping this out back into the end tank and then reloading with product that is in the larger of the 2 tanks there. So we're filling the one, emptying that one, and then once we get that empty, yes, we'll load that, the product that's in those 2 larger clear colored blue tanks. So we've got 918.9 in these small ones, 2800 and 2 larger ones, and then the yellow one we've got 1133 in that one. So we'll get the planter cleaned out and we will get fertilizer sorted. We use the fertilizer that's in the yellow tank for ground that we have not put manure on. We're going to be going in the ground here now that has had manure. That's why we are switching product. Alright, well, let's get the planter cleaned out, get a tote opened up, dump the corn into it, and get some BMR seed loaded into the seed tender. Looks like I've got just a little bit left on that front tank there. We only put about 4 pounds or 4 gallons of this product on per acre, and we put anywhere from 11 to 14 gallons of that product that we run out of this tank here. So that tank is full. I can shut this off, and then I can go to vacuuming the tank out. Oh, I overflowed just a little bit. So I'll get my hoses switched back around, let this pump off. It takes a while to load this 3,000 gallon tank, but we've got to get product out of it first. It's having to pump it into this yellow tank, and this yellow tank has got quite a little bit in there, so it's having to push it in the bottom. And yeah, so that old pump just a working away here. Well, we got 800 gallons left, 400 gallons left. So well, we've got the front one full, the back one empty, and now we are loading it out of these 2 tanks here with a pump on the ground. We have found that it's too hard to suck the fluid uphill to put it into the tank, so we just have a second pump that works out a little better that way. I have loaded down there before too. It works better to have a little more of a gravity flow to the pump. Loads a little faster. So while this is filling, we'll get the planter cleaned out. Well, we've got the fertilizer truck loaded, and we just got done cleaning out both planters. And now we are cleaning emptying the seed out of the seed tender back in the tote that it came out of. And then we'll load in a couple of BMR varieties. scale said there was about 1,200 pounds left in the bin. I weighed the empty crate, and then we'll just write on here how many pounds are in this tote, and we'll have to hold on to this until next year, being that we opened it, so we won't be able to return it. So that I can get all this seed out, I'll dump that next seed in there, open the bin up, let it run a little bit, just so that we get everything out of the auger. That's run out. Make sure it's not coming up into our spout there. Let that run a minute so it can clean out. Crank up the throttle a little bit. Alright, so we're going to dump our next variety in. Hopefully the seed is a different color, and we'll run a little bit of seed through to flush the rest of that out so that we don't have any of this seed in the tube. Alright, so we got green seed here, red seed there, and then what we're going to do is we're going to run this until we see some red seed come out. There we go. Alright. Well, we've got our seed tote put away. It's actually that top one right there, and we ended up with 1,500 pounds of seed that was left over in seed tender and what was left in both planters. Now, if you recall back a while ago, I had to replace this seed sensor on row 16. I've never had to replace a sensor before on this planter. Now, this has got the update kit in it. The sensor that is currently on here now, the wire harness is just a little longer than what came off of here. These sensors were for this whole setup prior to putting the update kit in it. Now, we hadn't planted anything when I went to change this. I changed it. I did not pay attention to the little gasket that goes on the actual eye itself. I've got 3 of them in a bag here. And after I had the problem, after it was on there for a week or so, I noticed it got mud on the eye, and I figured that I had some water go over the top of the row unit here, and it got down in there, and then dust had stuck to it. And then I vaguely remember a little O-ring around this sensor that, of course, was stuck to the old one, and I didn't pay no attention to it. And there was not an O-ring in this wire harness kit, and I assumed that the O-ring probably goes with the seed tube itself as far as what's available for that O-ring. Now, I don't know, maybe the sensor that goes to this update kit, maybe it comes with the O-ring, but the other 3 sensors that we have do not have an O-ring in them. So we're gonna go ahead and get one on there. I did have this bother here last night again, and it was full of dust. It had dust against this little window here. If I recall right, the older seed tubes did not have that little window, and you could actually run a brush up through and you could wipe off the sensor itself. However, This one, you're not doing that. It is, the only thing you're going to be able to clean off is the seed tube side, the seed side of that little window. So Mike's filling up with fuel. He is going to start working on some ground that they've been spreading manure on. He's got maybe today and tomorrow. And Andrew is working on spreading box stall manure. So we're coming into the tail end of it here. Jared's working on the rock merger. We did buy a new merger. It's a 34-foot rock 1150 merger, and we'll have to do a walk around of it here in the next day or two. So let's get this together and get to planting. So we've got this gasket on here, and like I said, I vaguely remember after the fact that there was a gasket, a little O-ring on that eye that I pulled off quite some time ago. However, I think that one was green, and it completely slipped my mind. I know somebody brought it up in the comment section after the fact, and a couple of days after I realized what we had going on, I had read the comment. Up over our clips there, we'd be all set. So that ought to clean up this problem. I've had to pull this seed hopper off of here a couple of different times, and when I did, there was a fair amount of seed in it. I looked around for that old sensor, and I shot it out. So now we just cut these guys off. We took the seed tender and the fertilizer truck to the field, so we'll have to get to the field and then we'll fill up with seed and fertilizer, and we'll get going here. Well, we are just getting ready to pull out here with the planter. Gotta run on and grab a sandwich. And there goes Andrew. He has switched tractor and spreaders there. 8320 on the H&S. That was on a manure pump here a little bit ago. And now he's back spreading with it. Well, we are now over to Jared's place. I just got done planting a couple of fields up in behind me. My father, he's on the other side of Oak Hill Road, which that is behind me. I got him planting on the north side of Oak Hill, and we're going to stay on the south side. So this farm here, this is where we have our satellite manure storage. And this is the access driveway to get into this farm. Jared lives in that house there, and we bought this farm several years ago. There used to be a freestall off the end of the cow barn here, and there was also 2 other silos here as well. There was a 20 by 60 and a 24 by 60, which we took both of those down. We didn't do it. Mennonite fella came and did that. They took them both down and brought them back to the home farm and built that silo that's in behind the commodity shed, which is a 24 by, well, I thought I could get in to that field from here, but we're gonna have to go out on the road. I forgot that this was like that. So the silo that's in behind the commodity shed, that's a 24 by 85. It's a ribstone silo. Now some of you might be asking, why didn't you take down the other one? Well, the other silo is a Lancaster silo, and the cement blocks aren't as thick on the Lancaster silos, and the gentleman that did the silo work, he said they're not worth tearing down because and reusing, because the blocks are so thin. By the time you get the silo down, there's not enough blocks to make a good silo out of, and it's just not worth doing. We have our other cement silo that's on the old side of the road is a Lancaster silo as well, and I kind of thought, hey, you know what, we could take this, well, this silo that's left over here is a 16 by 60, and the one that we have at home is a 20 by 65. Take both of them down, put them back up in behind the commodity shed, and use it. Maybe find another one to be able to get blocks from. But he's, you know, like I said, he said that those Lancaster silos aren't worth reassembling. So we'll go ahead and get set up here, and then we'll, oh, we got a fire over there. What in the heck is that? That's not good. I hope that is one of the neighbors. I gotta call my father and make sure that's not him. So, that's not good. A lot of smoke right there. And that's where he is at. So, I'm gonna call him, make sure he's not on fire. Well, I just got off the phone with my father. It's not him. He's not on fire, so that's a good thing. So, being that this lagoon is kind of parked in the middle of a couple of these strips, we're going to have to remap these strips. Now, several years ago, I redid these strips, and what I did was I put every other strip in its own field so that we didn't have one separate field for each and every strip. It was a pain in the butt opening fields up when we were chopping or even chopping hay. It was just a pain in the old rear end making sure that you were going back and forth to this display and changing fields. So I ended up mapping the whole thing with a 2630 display separately. I made interior boundaries for the strips that weren't, I made interior boundaries on the even strips and then made them non-passable, and yeah, did things that way. So what we're going to be able to do, being that we're using this different display here, this is a 4640 display, and what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to create a new boundary by creating the boundary, which I could show you here, from an existing coverage map. So when we get all done planting these strips, I can go in and tell it that I want to create a boundary based upon my previous coverage. And then that will overwrite the boundary that we have established already for these strips. Now again, I need to and I want to do that because we've got the lagoon, the manure lagoon, which is in front of us here, taking up a little bit of this strip. It's taking up a little bit of the next one, and it's just going to decrease. It has decreased the acreage a little bit, if you will, of a couple of these strips. And then I'll do the same thing when we combine the wheat off of these even strips. So where we are planting right now was hay last year, and then that in alongside us was corn. We chopped the corn, planted the wheat in the fall, and then we'll harvest the wheat here in July, and then we'll put manure on this, and we'll seed these other strips down to alfalfa. So we'll just keep plugging away. You can see it is real dusty. When the girls were disking, we came up here earlier and you could not see the tractor at all, or the implement behind the tractor. So we'll keep plugging away here. Okay, so we got these strips done. We're ready to fill up with seed, and I'll show you how we're going to do this boundary. Everything in the green is what we planted for the strips, and you can kind of see where the lagoon is setting. Well, you can't see it in this picture because it's an old Google image, but the lagoon is sitting kind of right in this area here where I have my finger. These red spots are where I stop to move seed around in the planter, and then this solid red spot is a spot where we are down below 32,000 on the population. I had to, of course, bump that up. So now we're going to come over to the display. We're going to hit our quick tab, and it's asking us that we're setting up our boundaries. So it's asking us, choose a method in which creating your boundary. Existing coverage map, which you can use a yield map, a planting map like we have, or you can do a driven standard boundary, which when you do the driven standard boundary, we're going to go into that. You could go off of either side of the planter. You can change it to the tractor, change your boundary offset. So we're going to cancel that. We're going to get back into boundary. Existing coverage map is what we want to use. We're just going to hit OK. It's going to go ahead and figure that out. It's going to take it a little while just because. So we'll go over here and we'll show you the lagoon. Jared's got it cleaned right out down to, it's completely clean. It's scraped right out down to the concrete. We had a custom outfit come in here a few weeks ago. They drag lined the manure out of it. We're not sure if we're going to do that again or not. It's a lot of setup just to get out of this lagoon. For as small as it is, we're not really sure if we're going to do that again, but at any rate, we'll cross that road when we get to it. This is a 3 million gallon satellite manure storage facility. We trucked the manure over here from our home farm, and you can see they've got this cleaned right out down to the concrete. Now this has what's called a sump. There is a spot that is down below, I'm echoing, down in below the actual level of the floor, and that's where they set the pump. Now they built this framework here so that they could back the tractor and pump over onto it. Because of how they have to lay out all the rebar and everything, they couldn't put this sump right up next to the wall, so they had to be out a ways so that they didn't interfere with the footer of the actual wall. So that's why this is built here. What we're probably going to do with this is put a floor on the bottom of it and then fill it full of concrete, this I-beam, H-beam structure here, because the tractor and the pump set over onto it. So Jared, he brought our noon pump over here, pumped all of the manure out, and then they were able to push the thin manure that was left on the floor over to this sump, and basically took everything out with the noon pump. And then they had a little bit that they ended up scooping up and loading into spreaders. So that is the story behind that, and we are going to go ahead and fill up with seed here quick, and going to get moved to the next field here. Well, we're into the following day here now, and it is Sunday morning. I'm going to fill up with fertilizer because I got to move up the road just a mile or two. And I do not want to have to come back here to fill up. But before we do that, or after we fill up with fertilizer, before we get to planting, I did run through a calibration on these row units like I did the other day. I did the 4 tests. Now we did have a couple of failures on a couple of different rows. That went away after I did a calibration at the end of the day. However, we changed this we changed row 14 out, the hydraulic downforce unit, the other day, and when I went to recalibrate everything here a couple of days after we replaced that, row 14 had shown a failure. Now we've got another issue going on here too. 11 and 12 failed, and then every once in a while the hydraulic hoses chatter between those 2 row units. So I've got 3 hydraulic downforce units that we're going to go ahead and put on. We're down towards the end, the last little bit of planting left, and I want to get this problem somewhat corrected. It's not really causing a problem, but I want to get this problem corrected so that it is ready to go into next year. So we've got the same code coming up on row 14. I'm going to try to recalibrate everything while we're filling up with fertilizer. But the other thing that I wanted to show you was we did get this boundary done here for this field, and of course I can't show it to you right now because it does not want to cooperate. So when we got done planting around these strips here, which I could do it again, existing coverage map, it's going to just redo the boundary around the actual coverage, and then when that's done we'll show you what that shape file looks like for those particular strips. Now these wheat strips, will do the same thing with that. We'll redo those, being that this driveway comes through here and it kind of cuts that off. We'll just remap that, and we'll remap that from an actual coverage map when we do the wheat, whether it's from when we seed it or from when we combine it, because we'll combine the wheat and then we'll seed this down to alfalfa. Probably more or less will be when we seed it down to alfalfa, because the combine is older and it does not like this 4640 display. So that's what the shape file now looks like, and the manure lagoon is right in this section right here. So we'll go ahead and get filled up with fertilizer. While we're doing that, I'm going to run through a calibration here. Well, we've got our hopper removed, and I have 3 of these units left over, brand new ones. They're not $2,500 a piece, they're $1,600 and something. This one, the wires are cut. I don't know what happened to that, but at any rate, those are ripped right out of there, and I don't know what could have possibly caused that, because there's no real way that that can even come into contact with anything. So I don't know what happened there, but at any rate, we've got to get some new pins for this plug, and yeah, so there's no sense in changing this guy out. This guy is good, just the wires are cut from it, so we'll have to get some new pins for that. It does provide hydraulic downforce, it just doesn't have any sensing to get back to the tractor. So it's working, it's just not able to fluctuate as much as it should. So again, I don't know how those wires could have been ripped out of that, but at any rate, they were. So yeah, I don't know. So we'll go ahead and change row 2 and 4. Well, we ended up going back to the farm. We got some wire connectors, and I got a pallet of seed. We just got the 12-row planter loaded. We took everything out of the seed tender. Seed tender's empty. So I have new wire connectors, just splice butt connectors on the wires. Then we're going to pull the pins out of this plug. I've got the pins released. We can just push them out, and then we'll go ahead and hook these wires into those butt connectors there, and then we'll get the appropriate pins back into the plug, get the right orientation in there, and then plug it back in, and hopefully that works. Alright, we'll go over and connect these. I need to get an assortment of these pins. Alright, we'll let that cool down. If you notice, I did cut off some of the shrink wrap. That's going to be down in the plug. That's going to be protected anyways, but I needed to cut that off so that we had the it's going to be tight if that was on there. So I've got the one next door unplugged. I just need to line up my numbers correctly. So we got a 26020 goes in first, and then a 6399 goes in last. Alright, so we've got that all plugged in. I should have set this over the top of it. Well, it wouldn't have worked anyways, because these butt connectors are too thick to fit this hole. So this is just the lock anyways to keep this tab from coming down. So we'll hold on to this. We'll get some new pins And then what we'll do is we'll cut these off. We've got enough wire here to put new pins on. Then when we put the new pins on, we'll be able to use the back side of this plug. So for now, we're going to go ahead and try to calibrate this to see if this is working. I don't know why. This must have come up past here and hit that. But we'll have to check some of the other ones here as well. As I get this guy here plugged back in. Maybe 2 and 4. Maybe those are wrecked too. No, they're in good shape. So 2, 3, or 4, 3, 2. They're all together. All right, let's try to calibrate this. I'm gonna put this in the armrest unit. Get this picked up. All right, diagnostics, accumulator test, begin procedure. Start the test. We're not going to bore you with the whole thing here. We're just going to see how the initial 4 go. If these other ones fail, which 2 failed right off the bat. I just mainly want to see if 14 passes here. 4 failed. Alright, 14 passed, so we're good there. I think it was, what were we? 2, 4, 5? 2, 4, and 14 failed the accumulator test. So we'll go ahead and change out the accumulator hydraulic unit on both 2 and 4 now. And as far as the valve test goes, we'll have to worry about that later on here. So let's go and swap them out. Alright, so we've got this all the way down, and this was kind of close to, I just pulled this back. Being that we have these goofy connectors on there, it has brought it back farther. But it looks like our distance in between is about the same. However, this bracket that holds this, it's the computer unit itself for this row unit, was slightly forward a little bit, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. So now we can put our hopper on, start on 2 and 4. Alright, so we have the old ones removed, and I have found that the best way to put these new ones on is to pin the top, remove your plugs, and then you need to pull the stem out of the bottom. And the easiest way to do that is you pin the top, get the plugs out, then you remove the pin from the top, pin the bottom, and then what you can do is you can pull it up easier than trying to line the frickin' bottom up. So alright, so we got the bottom pinned, and we just pull this guy up to place, pin the top, cotter pin it, washer it, cotter pin it. We've got to put our fittings in this, hook our hoses up, and then we've got to run through our sequence of tests just to make sure everything goes. Prior or before we do that, we'll have to purge the air out of the system. So let's get our hoses hooked up and get the unit together here. Alright, we've got both of them units on there. I do have to get some zip ties and tie these wires back up like so, but while we're going through the calibrations on that, we can of course monkey around with zip ties while that's going through that procedure. So we've got our loop hose here hooked up on one side, plug that in here, the other port, and then what that'll do is just let the oil circulate through to get all of the air out of the system here. So we need to run this through the calibration. Hopefully it goes through and we can put our tools away and get the wires tied up here. Alright, first test is the accumulator test. We're going to let this go through, tie up our wires, and we'll join back up with you after we get back in from tying them wires together. Actually, we might as well wait for 2 went, 4 was the other one, and 13 and 14 passed. So let's tie our wires up. That worked. Well, we have all of our bags of corn laid out. We're going to dump in 32 bags. I dump in 1 bag in each hopper, and then we put talc on, and then we'll dump the other bag in and put talc on top of the second bag. It's running through the last test here now, which is the valve test, and you can hear it kind of working the tractor. It's going through each pair of row units, and it activates the hydraulics on the tractor to kind of run it through its test. So let's get corn dumped in, and we'll get these bags burning, and we'll get on our way here. Alright, rows 11 and 12 failed the valve test. However, prior to changing those spring packs out, or those hydraulic valve bodies out, 2 and 5 and 11 failed. Now we replaced 2 and we replaced 14. So 11 and 12, we've got an issue there with a valve of some kind, and we're gonna have to address that. But the accumulator test, that more or less I think is the one that takes care of that hydraulic valve unit, the cylinder itself. So we're going to leave it at that. We're going to go ahead and go through the valve flush test. The valve flush, I think everything passed that one. Yeah. On the 23rd of May, the accumulator 2 and 4 failed the accumulator test. 11 and 12 failed the valve test. The 27th, yeah. So I think the valve flush test, all of them passed before, but let's get seed corn loaded. Well, we are on our way to the field now. We're going to go ahead and get some planting done. My father planted that field there, one in behind us, and then he's up here on the left planting, and we've got to go a mile or two to a couple of fields to get this farm finished up. So the valve test that we had performed while we were filling with corn, rows 11 and 12, failed the actual valve test. So we're going to have to address that problem. But at any rate, I wanted to replace 2 and 4, being that the hoppers were empty of corn, and I actually wanted to make sure that we didn't roll into any problems rolling into next year, or have any problems rolling into next year. the neighbor bought a new planter, a new 16 row, and they had 4 or 5 of those hydraulic downforce units fail right off the bat. And Kaz was able to source them from another something or other. I don't know if they took them off another planter or what, but those hydraulic units are on back order until July. I don't know what good it's going to do anybody in the Northeast to get those come July. If you need them, rate me out. So we're gonna get after it here. We're on the last little bit of planting we've got today and part of tomorrow, and then that is gonna be it. So we ought to see my father here in a second. This is one of our tenant houses here that we're having some work done to. So we got the little excavator sitting in the dooryard there, and there's some work getting done to the front porch and so on and so forth here. So he's planting this field right here, and he has planted the field down in below it. So we'll go ahead and get to the field here. Well, we are into the following day. Today is Memorial Day, and this is going to be the last field that I plant for 2023. My father's going to finish the rest of the planting up with the other planter, because we're going to roll into chopping first cutting hay. So everything worked good on the planter yesterday. I did a valve test and an accumulator test first thing this morning. Rows 11 and 12 failed the valve test. Now yesterday, 2, 5, 11, and 12, and 14 failed it, but we failed that valve test on 14 because of the wires being cut going to that pressure relief valve. So we've got that fixed, and then we replaced the 2 hydraulic downforce units on 2 and 4. So that cleaned up that accumulator test. However, we still have 11 and 12. They failed the valve test. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the valves off of a couple of those hydraulic downforce units that came off, and see if we can't just use the valve off of one of those older hydraulic downforce units. I don't know if that is faulted as well with that accumulator being bad. I need to find out if we can have that accumulator in those hydraulic downforce units rebuilt or not. The hydraulic downforce unit itself was like, I looked that up yesterday. I don't know if it was $1,600 or $1,700 or something like that. But at any rate, we are going to keep plugging away here. We're going to get this field done, and then we are going to get the chopper ready. So that ought to do it for this video. I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll catch you at the next one.